Deep in Australia's harsh outback desert, a land all too familiar with costly ecological mistakes, workers quietly erected thousands of kilometers of massive fencing to halt the invasion of millions of dangerous invasive species. When the project began, many mocked it as a meaningless and enormously expensive effort in a remote and arid landscape. Yet just a decade later, those seemingly simple fences became the starting point of an ecological turning point that astonished the world. Why do these fences not only protect livestock and crops, but also open the door to one of the most remarkable ecosystem reversals of the modern era? China takes pride in the Great Wall of China. Yet few realize that on the other side of the hemisphere, Australia also built its own Great Wall to confront silent ecological threats. It all began on Christmas Day in 1859, when English settler Thomas Austin released 24 European rabbits into the wild simply for weekend hunting. That seemingly harmless act quickly became one of the greatest ecological mistakes in Australian history. By the 1880s, rabbit populations were multiplying at an unprecedented rate, expanding their territory by 60 kilometers per year, stripping grasslands down to bare sand, and causing wool production in Victoria and South Australia to plummet severely. Authorities tried every measure: poison, mechanical traps, bounty systems, even explosives to drive them away. But human response always lagged behind their reproductive speed. Newspapers at the time called it the Grey Plague, and relentlessly pressured the government to take decisive action. In this climate of desperation, Western Australia proposed a bold solution: constructing a steel barrier stretching thousands of kilometers to halt the advance of this rodent species. In 1897, the first posts were driven into the ground near the Zeedorp Cliffs, marking the beginning of what would later become the famous rabbit-proof fence. Within just a decade, the main fence line extended 1,260 kilometers, built with 3 layers of galvanized steel mesh, buried 30 centimeters underground, and cleared with a 5-meter wide corridor on both sides to prevent rabbits from burrowing for shelter. By 1905, the rabbit-proof fence system had spread across multiple states, becoming embedded in the agricultural economic structure. Districts imposed taxes on livestock owners to maintain and expand the steel network. A fence-building culture gradually took root in Australia's land management philosophy. The turning point came in 1950 when the myxomatosis virus accidentally escaped from a laboratory and wiped out up to 90% of the rabbit population. Parliament even considered dismantling the fences, but the wool industry strongly opposed the move. The predator species had developed patrol patterns along the fence lines, and just one failed season could erase an entire year's profits. A structure originally built to fight a pest had now become a strategic link in the wool industry, an industry that once accounted for half of Australia's foreign exchange earnings. Economists estimated that the benefits generated by the system reached $5 billion, far exceeding maintenance costs. However, not everyone saw it as a complete victory. Some historians pointed out that the lands of the Niaju and Wangath peoples were divided without consent, disrupting traditional roots and long-standing cultural connections. From a small decision made on Christmas Day, Australia entered an ecological war that lasted more than a century. And those steel fence lines did more than stop rabbits. They reshaped the economy, environment, and society of an entire continent. Yet all of those efforts were only the beginning, because the true enemy that forced Australia to construct the largest defensive structure in its history was not the rabbit, but the dingo. If rabbits devastated Australian agriculture, dingoes gnawed at the very heart of the livestock industry. A single pack of dingoes could kill dozens of sheep in one night. Pressure from the pastoral sector pushed Australian politicians to once again choose the most familiar solution: build more fencing to confine all dingoes to the north and west of sheep grazing regions. In 1914, fence construction began from Jimbor, Queensland, as survey teams carried compasses, maps, and wooden stakes to chart the route. They traced a strategic fence line heading southwest, prioritizing shorter distances and control of grazing lands rather than avoiding harsh terrain. Once the route was finalized, workers began driving foundation posts section by section. Wooden and steel posts were embedded deep into the hardened, arid ground, spaced at standard intervals to ensure proper tension of the mesh. After the framework was completed, steel mesh and barbed wire were stretched tightly between the posts, forming a wall approximately 1.8 meters high. The base of the mesh was buried underground to prevent dingoes from digging beneath it, while the joints were secured with hand-forged steel hooks. Over more than 4 decades, fragmented fence segments were gradually connected into a unified system. By 1958, it officially became the dingo fence, stretching 5,614 kilometers. A steel horizon cutting across Australia's red centre, longer than the distance from London to New York, and one of the longest defensive structures ever built by humans to control nature. As of 2025, annual maintenance costs stand at approximately $10 million, along with a levy of 10 cents per shorn sheep. Ranchers grumble but admit that a single breach can wipe out profits faster than a drought. One winter night 3 years ago, a pack of dingoes killed 59 sheep in 4 hours near Hungerford. The rancher found the carcasses stacked like firewood beneath a mulga tree. A silent audit of the price of one loose steel pin. This great fence crosses rivers, slices through deserts, and spans the lands of 23 indigenous language nations. For indigenous communities, it is not merely a fence, but a scar cutting across ancestral songlines, dividing waterways and sacred spaces thousands of years old. More importantly, the disappearance of dingoes triggered a new disaster. Removing an apex predator destabilized the food web, and the ecological consequences that followed were what truly astonished the world. When dingoes disappeared from the eastern side of the fence, the ecological balance shifted immediately. The population of kangaroos, the natural prey of this apex predator, surged to around 45 million, nearly double Australia's current human population. Many still see the kangaroo as a gentle symbol of Australia, until they encounter a fully grown male standing nearly 2 meters tall, weighing over 90 kilograms, muscles rippling, capable of delivering a kick exceeding 800 psi, enough to break human bones, or pinning a hunting dog in the open scrub. The charming image on postcards is entirely different from the reality of a powerful wild animal. Kangaroos represent a unique ecological paradox, both a national symbol and a legally hunted and processed species on the very land they symbolize. But their population explosion is not a matter of sentiment. Moving in large mobs, consuming vast amounts of vegetation, and being highly active at night, kangaroos directly compete with livestock for food, damage fencing, trample crops, and cause economic losses reaching billions of dollars each year. Some indigenous communities strongly oppose the hunting, viewing kangaroos as sacred animals tied to the land and ancestral stories. However, many ecologists warn that once an ecosystem has been pushed away from its natural state by human intervention, controversial measures can sometimes become the least harmful option. As a result, to maintain balance across grasslands and protect the livestock industry, approximately 1.5 to 2 million kangaroos are culled under controlled programs each year, supporting a meat and leather industry worth more than $150 million. The kangaroo boom became the clearest evidence of the cascading consequences of removing dingoes, marking a new chapter in the fence war that has lasted for more than a century across this continent. Australia's ecosystem is like a delicate spiderweb. Disturb a single strand, and the entire structure reacts in a chain response. Removing dingoes caused grasslands to disappear, soils to lose carbon, and red dust to drift as far as Sydney. Insects, birds, soil fungi, and shrubs all shifted in structure. Many scientists describe the dingo fence as a line dividing two worlds, one side kept in balance by dingoes, the other eroded from its roots. Today, the fence no longer relies solely on human labor. Ranchers deploy infrared drones, vibration sensors, and motion-activated lights to detect breaches. Maintenance consumes not only budgets but also morale. Many units must provide satellite-based psychological support and recovery leave to retain personnel. However, the greatest threat to the structure is not only wildlife. Ultraviolet radiation, night dew, termites, flash floods, and dust storms silently weaken the steel framework. By 2024, auditors warned that around 1,000 kilometers of fencing had severely deteriorated and could fail within 5 years. The state of New South Wales was forced to spend tens of millions of dollars on reconstruction, replacing old sections with recycled composite posts and automated solar-powered gates. Ultimately, perceptions of the fence depend on one's position and interests. The same structure can safeguard farmers' livelihoods while also dividing land and centuries-old cultural memories. The debate between prioritizing livestock production or restoring nature has therefore never truly reached a conclusion. In council meetings, discussions range from individual bolts to alternatives such as livestock guardian dogs, and data show that in some areas, these dogs can reduce attacks by up to 70%. But such debates only scratch the surface. The fence's impact runs far deeper. In China, genetic studies around the Great Wall of China reveal that plant populations on either side show signs of divergence lasting thousands of years, a warning for any structure that fragments habitats. In Australia, kangaroo populations east of the dingo fence have gradually altered their bone structure over time. If the fence were suddenly removed, they might not adapt quickly enough to the return of dingoes. And the lesson is not Australia's alone. Botswana once erected veterinary fences that caused mass die-offs of migrating antelope when routes were blocked. Canada's dense fencing networks have disrupted pronghorn migration corridors. In Europe, barriers built to contain African swine fever have inadvertently become ghost walls, trapping deer and lynx. The broader lesson is becoming clear. Fences erected to solve temporary crises often endure for decades, leaving behind ecological legacies that are difficult to reverse. But Australia's deepest lesson lies in the opposite direction, not only in building, but in knowing when to dismantle. In 2004, Botswana dismantled part of the Naipan fence. Within 3 years, zebras restored a 600-kilometer migration route, reviving grasslands, water flows, and tourism in a once dry region. That example pushed Australia to rethink the dingo fence. A 2025 proposal suggests moving about 50 kilometers of the fence north, protecting key sheep zones instead of the entire line. The plan combines guardian dogs, motion sensors, and remote monitoring. Early trials show that removing just 1 kilometer can trigger vegetation recovery, rising lizard numbers, and improved soil within 3 seasons. The risk is real. Dingo losses could reach $65 million annually, but long-term savings may total $80 million in maintenance. New digital fence systems, fiber optic sensors, patrol drones, non-lethal deterrents could replace rigid steel barriers. Even so, that future remains uncertain. Climate change is causing flash floods and wildfires to damage physical structures more frequently, while technology evolves faster than policy can adapt. And so the core question returns to its starting point. Is Australia's vast fencing system ultimately protecting nature, or quietly harming the very ecosystem it was created to preserve? In your view, what is the most viable solution? Maintain it as is, upgrade it, or gradually dismantle it under controlled plans? Leave your thoughts in the comments and continue following Terran Works to explore the dramatic intersections between humanity and nature.